coffee. Hello, welcome everybody. Welcome to another IAEI News Live. Jason Doty, Happy New Year. Happy New Year. What a, yeah, I'm looking forward to this one too, because there, from a 70E perspective, there's a lot of interaction. And anyway, you and I both know what's going on panel 10 and all that jazz. A lot of opportunities ahead of us, in my opinion. So glad to see you here, my friend. I like your icon there. It's got that danger sign. Run, Will Robinson. Awesome. So it's 12 o'clock. It's Tuesday. And it is time for another IAEI News Live, and we are going to chat about our discussion point for this session is an interesting topic, because and a lot of it was a lot of the reasons why I even put this on the table, Jason, is because of our discussions that occurred on panel 10. We had an interesting discussion at the table, and I had hopes. But I'm not sure. I don't think we're going to end up where we wanted to end up. But in any case, there's always been this debate and discussion about when does the National Electrical Code step on the toes of 70E, and vice versa. Well, it's never vice versa. It's never when does 70E step on the toes of the National Electrical Code. It's always, and I've heard this in the past, oh, you can't talk about arc flash in the National Electrical Code because that's under the purview of 70E. And, oh, we got arc energy reduction. Yes, absolutely. Laurel is in the house. Me too, Laurel. We were just talking about that, Jason and I. We got a lot of great, I think we're going to have some good discussion points, and I'd love to get the chat going on this one. So you have the requirements. So what one of the discussion points a while ago that I had with a few others in the industry, this goes back when we start talking about 240.87 and 240.67. For those of you who don't know, I'm hoping that everybody out there has a copy of NFPALink up and running. Hey, Michael Hofkin, I'm going to answer your text. I saw your text. I was just looking through that. I have you on the calendar, so I believe we're still good, but I will respond to your text and verify. Happy New Year to you. And Steve, so we got Michael Hofkin in the house saying Happy New Year. We got Steve in the house saying Happy New Year. Remember, hit the thumbs up, subscribe, all that jazz. But so there's two places in the National Electrical Code that speaks to incident energy. Now, I titled this discussion a discussion between the 70E in general and 70, how they complement each other. I could have thrown 70B into this discussion, but I did not. But I could very well throw 70B into this discussion as well, because I believe they all complement each other. But the real what I have seen in the past and heard the debates on when it comes to 70E and the National Electrical Code, it's not been around shock protection and GFCIs. I mean, there is a very good track record when it comes to GFCIs. I could sit down and throw. In fact, I was surprised at this, but remember in 70E, Article 110 it has your general requirements for electrical safety related work practices. These are your general requirements. 110.8 is titled Ground Fault Circuit Interrupter Protection, and 210.8 is titled Ground Fault Circuit Interrupter Protection for Personnel. So we have even a number alignment between 70E and 70 when it comes to .8. Now, we have in 70E, we have the requirements. And Steve's got a good question. Yeah, send them on over, Steve. GFCI question, I hope doesn't challenge me too much. Every question challenges this guy. But remember, I'm only as smart as the smartest person in my Rolodex. Just saying. So 70E, I'm going to focus on shock protection first. Let's focus on shock protection first. 70E tells us that when we're performing work, that I need to have shock protection. And it doesn't care whether or not you're working in a 1950s vintage home that may not have had any GFCI installed, or if you are in a 2023, or what is it now? It's 2025. If you're in a house that was just commissioned in 2025 that's built to the latest National Electrical Code and has GFCIs a lot of different places and AFCIs, from a shock protection though, GFCIs, it doesn't care. Now, let's take a look at what 110 says. 110 says employees shall be provided with listed ground fault circuit interrupter protective devices where required by applicable state, federal, or local codes and standards. Now, listed cord sets or devices incorporating listed GFCI protection for personnel identified for portable use shall be permitted. So, man, this is a good, Steve, I'm struggling here. So 110.8a says employees shall be provided. I'm going to be hearing these dings from my emails, so I'm going to put this in reduce interruptions for 1 hour. I'm going to see what that does. But 110.8a just tells me that I need to have GFCI where it is required by applicable state, federal, or local codes and standards. So if I'm in a 1950s home, I'm going to use a residential dwelling unit. NFPA 70E would apply if I'm working in a residential dwelling unit. So the location is not a concern. So if GFCI protection is required in a garage and I'm going to be doing work in the garage, then I would read that as even though the state, federal, or local code or standard may say that 1950s home does not have to be brought up to the latest code. Wow. What do you guys think of that one? I'm struggling with 110.8a for an existing location that was built prior to when GFCIs were required. and if the local state or code does not require you to bring that location up to speed with regard to GFCI protection. Let's keep going. B, 110.8b. GFCI protection shall be provided where an employee is operating or using cord sets or cord and plug connected tools related to maintenance and construction activities supplied by a 120 volt, 15, 20, or 30 ampere circuits, period. It doesn't say if you're in the kitchen, in the bathroom, if you're in the garage. I could be in my living room if I'm using a cord set or cord and plug connected tools and performing maintenance or construction activities, and I'm on a 15, 20, or 30 ampere circuit, I need to have GFCI protection. Where employees operate or use equipment supplied by greater than 15, 20, 30 ampere circuits, GFCI protection or an assured equipment grounding conductor program shall be implemented. So this 70E goes above and beyond what the National Electrical Code is going to require as part of the built infrastructure, because this is dealing with work, a work environment, how work is being conducted. So there's a difference in when work is being performed, what you're required. Hey, Travis Holderman, good to see you. Welcome to IAEI News Live. So if I'm performing work, I'm held to a higher standard on my extension cords and cord and plug connected equipment. If I'm in the built environment, my receptacles, some receptacles are going to need to be GFCI protected, some are not going to be required to be GFCI protected, and there's no exceptions on maintenance and construction, even beyond 30 amps. So if I am if I'm working with equipment that is supplied by greater than 120 volts, 15, 20, or 30 ampere circuits, I'm going to need GFCI protection or an assured equipment grounding conductor program for those loads, for whatever it is that I'm operating. Freddie B. An employee needs it even if the local codes for a dwelling unit as a permanent means doesn't require the contractor working in the space still needs it. OSHA would, but only if an injury occurs. Right. So here's, I think you're covered in B. I'm struggling, Fred, with what's in A, because it says employees shall be provided with listed GFCI protective devices where required by applicable state, federal, or local codes and standards. I can't look at the National Electrical Code. If it wouldn't apply, I would need another code or standard, but I think you're covered in 110.8b for a lot of applications for cord and plug connected. I mean, from a construction and maintenance perspective, that's when you're going to be using tools. But A covers employees shall be provided with listed ground fault circuit where required by applicable state, federal. So employees shall be provided with listed. I could just see, for some reason in my mind, I pictured somebody standing at the front door saying, "Hey, welcome. Here's your GFCI. You need this. Here's your GFCI receptacle. Here's your GFCI receptacle. You're an employee. You need this." So, Fred, I'm just struggling with A and how it relates to the installation requirements, because if the state code does not require GFCI protection because my house was built in the 20s, and I don't have to go back and retrofit into that existing home all this GFCI protection, and the state doesn't require me to do that, then if I guess, though, to get a business license, if you're an employee, it wouldn't be a dwelling unit. right? So if I have a site, place of business, if I take a residential dwelling unit and I turn it into a place of business where I'm going to have employees, there are codes and standards that are then going to say, now that you have employees, now you need to bring that infrastructure up to a different level of requirements. I don't know what code or standard that would be. I would love input on that one. Steve, I've always hated local code amendments by enactors that fail to understand the intent of the code. The installation of GFCI and AFCI, yes. You know what, Steve? I'm with you. When you get to that portion, it becomes political, unfortunately. So Jason, he's my man. OSHA requires that a workplace is free of known hazards. Electrical shock and arc energy are known electrical hazards. Luckily, 70E gives us the how to mitigate the known hazards. I agree with you. And Jason, I'd love your perspective on 110.8a. If I'm in a place of business now, because this is an employee, so let's say, and I love this, to say I took this dwelling unit and I'm going to turn this into a place of business where I have employees. Let's say I'm going to create a law firm. And now it's a place of business. And I have employees. And let's say, for example, this house was built in 1906. The National Electrical Code, if I'm not changing anything in the infrastructure, and I'm just going to hang a slate on the outside. I'm going to have an administrative assistant who's going to be sitting at the front desk by the front door. I'm not adding any circuits for the administrative assistant. In fact, I'm going to require that that individual use pad and paper for everything, and all I'm going to do is run a phone line over there. So I'm not making any changes to the structure in my bathroom and in my kitchenette and all those areas. What code or standard would I fall back on? Would it be OSHA regulations? I guess it would be OSHA regulations that would say, look, you have a kitchenette, you have a sink, you have receptacles, you have appliances. You need to now make this free from those electrical hazards, which would require you to put GFCI protection in for that installation. I guess because I couldn't get there through the National Electrical Code, I'm not going to be calling a building inspector to come in and inspect my electrical infrastructure. But if I'm doing a place of business, I am registering this. I would have to go to the county to say that I am permitted to turn this house into a place of business. It has to be zoned for that. And that may bring in those rules. But I would love to hear that discussion. Steve, for workers, they can bring a portable GFCI plug adapter to be protected. Yes, that's exactly right. And that's what it says in 110.8a. Listed cord sets or devices incorporating listed GFCI protection for personnel identified for portable use shall be permitted. So if in that installation, it's still, I mean, if I'm going to use this house that was built in 1920, whatever, as a place of business, do I have to put GFCIs in my kitchen? I can't use a cord set for that. And the people that would be in that kitchen would be employees, although they're not performing electrical work. They're just, I guess that's the defined line. Are they performing electrical work? If they're not performing electrical work, if that's just my administrative assistant who's taking notes, answering phones, and going to use the bathroom, and going to use the kitchen, they're not performing electrical work. They wouldn't fall under the provisions of 70E, bringing GF shock protection to receptacles would have to fall under a different envelope. At least that's what I'm thinking. Steve? OSHA will bite you. Fred B. Autocorrect issue. OSHA will bite you. I don't know if I saw the OSHA. OSHA would butt you. Okay, would bite you. I got you. I got you, Fred. I got you covered, brother. But as a contractor, I must protect the employees. OSHA requires GFCI protection on any outlet that an employee is connecting a tool or lighting to, even for dwelling units. It can be a temporary GFCI. That's right. So it could be a cord set. But the key here is I have to be performing electrical work. This has nothing to do with people who are just going to be working and doing whatever business they have inside of that structure. I'm a little late to the party, but good morning from Idaho. There we go. Eric Hammond in the house. Jason says OSHA is the fallback position because the dwelling is no longer just a dwelling. Yeah, I would agree with you. It's no longer just a dwelling. Now it's a place of business. I would agree with you, Jason. Even on new construction, the GFCI plug adapter can be plugged into the temporary service pole outlet. Yeah, you're right. You're right. But OSHA, I guess it would be OSHA coming to town to say, look, they would probably look if the temporary power didn't have all GFCI breakers, then they would look at probably every extension on the job site to make sure that it had GFCI built in. And I'm guessing that you probably have everything on the truck has probably got GFCI on the truck. 70E would not apply, but OSHA certainly would. Jason, that's right. So, yeah, you're right, Jason. So from a workplace environment, as the owner, 70E, because we're not performing electrical work, we have people just working here. Generally, I would have to make sure that my employees are protected from shock hazards. So OSHA, other OSHA regulations would put me into that world. Is an employee plugging in anything? OSHA would require GFCI. So that's not a 70E thing. It's an OSHA thing. Thank you, Fred. Any contractor working in or on dwellings is a worker. Even the painter has to have GFCI protection. You're correct. You are absolutely correct. It's anybody. Wow. But, oh man. Yes, that's an OSHA. That would fall back on OSHA. That would fall back on OSHA. Keith Wilson, get in there, Keith. When you change from a dwelling to a business, you would have to have a state or local inspection for rezoning. I said that. I'm not as dumb as I look. The facility. Once that happens, the state or local code may require you to update. Very good point, and that would be the reason why the inspector would come in and say, hey, you need GFCIs in the kitchen. You need the GFCI protect all these receptacles in the kitchen and in the bathroom and in the basement and the outside. You would have to bring that up. And you might, right, Keith, you might have to bring up the accessibility, the ADA stuff too. You might have to put a ramp outside for accessibility depending upon local zoning laws. I knew there was something there. Yes, for Tennessee State, it would be TOSHA. TOSHA. It almost sounds like a fancy food. Agree with Keith. Yes, Steve. See that? We are in agreement. So when I look at 110.8 as part of 70E, which the discussion right now is really bridged between 70E and OSHA, the requirements for workers and people who are working in an environment have to be protected from electrical hazards. The National Electrical Code tells us where shock protection GFCIs would have to be installed on which circuits. So that gives us a direction or a reference point. Okay, gives us a reference point and the applicable state, federal, or local codes and standards, because if it's a place of business, then I would have to follow those rules for employees. If I am an electrician going to a residential dwelling unit that has no GFCIs in it, then I would use listed GFCI protection for the work that I'm doing of maintenance and construction as part of 110.8b. And I would have to give GFCI protection above and beyond what is required for that structure. So 70E handles the work practices. The National Electrical Code sets you up so that if you are working at, for example, if my HVAC person came to my house, my basement receptacles and any receptacle that is there for that electrical worker or HVAC worker, or to Steve or Keith or whomever's point, I think it was Steve's comment. If that person is coming to my house, they would know if they plug a tool into the receptacle, it's GFCI protected. They could verify that, which I would highly hope that they did. And anything they plug in would be GFCI protected. Now, I can tell you, when my HVAC person comes to the house, there is a receptacle over there. I know it's GFCI protected, but I have honestly never seen him plug anything in there. And I'm like a hawk. I'm always over it. I'm talking to him and chatting with him. And one of these days, I'm going to get him on the program because he's a very smart guy. And he always has battery operated equipment, and I've never seen him plug anything in while he's doing maintenance on my HVAC system. Freddie B. Fred says egress lighting also becomes required with change of venue from dwelling to business. So there's another aspect. So when I think about the National Electrical Code, we have just in general 210.70, I think it's 70, 210, I know it's Article 210, I believe 210.70 is where we get into lighting. I'm on panel 2, and if I didn't get this right, I'm gonna get tarred and feathered by everybody on this call. 210.60, 210.62, 63, 210.70. See that? I at least got that right. Lighting outlets shall be installed where specified in A, B, and C. The switch or listed wall-mounted control device shall not rely exclusively on battery power. Right? So we put that in the 2023 code. We have in A, dwelling units. We have to have kitchens, laundry areas, and bathrooms, and all habitable rooms. We have additional locations for hallways, stairways, attached garage, detached garages. This is all safety related. I could sit down and say in 70E and OSHA that we have to have areas lit for the electrical worker. And the National Electrical Code is going to require these lighting outlets to be located in these specific areas. We got lighting outlets installed for interior stairways. They have to have listed wall-mounted control devices. In hotels and motels, we have to have at least one lighting outlet. And in all attics, underfloor spaces, utility rooms, basements, at least one lighting outlet containing a switch or controlled our spaces are for storage. A point of control shall be at each entry that permits access. And where a lighting outlet is installed for equipment requiring service, the lighting outlet shall be installed at or near the equipment. So it says where it's required for equipment. So elsewhere in the National Electrical Code, I'm going to have requirements for lighting for specific equipment. Robert from, Freddie B, egress. We already got the egress lighting. So other changes happen if there is a change of usage of the building. Yes, Fred, there's going to be other requirements. And we've got Robert from Omaha. And accessory buildings. Don't forget accessory buildings. You're right. So So here's the thing. So the national, and I'm telling you, it's a perfect harmony between safe work practices and NEC requirements. And I'm so far we've talked about shock protection, and in GFCI, in shock protection, we have temporary. Chapter 5. Boy, Chapter 5, I hope I got that right. Yes, 590. 590 temporary wiring is going to have 590.6 ground fault protection for personnel for all temporary wiring. I got to put lighting down. I got to remember lighting. I got to remember lighting. I forgot about lighting. Lighting requirements in the code. So we got lighting requirements and for specific pieces of equipment that require work, etc. But we also have GFCI requirements in temporary wiring. It says temporary wiring installations shall be provided to comply. GFCI for personnel for all temporary wiring installations shall be provided to comply with 590.6A and B. B is DC. I think B is DC. Hold on. B is other receptacles. B is not DC. I thought it was DC. It's not DC. For temporary wiring installation receptacles other than those covered by A1 through A3, used to supply temporary power to equipment used by personnel during construction, remodeling, maintenance, repair, or demolition of buildings. Demolition, that's in there. Shall have protection in accordance with GFCI. Ground fault circumference for personnel. That's in B1. So what is A? A is temporary receptacle installations used to supply temporary power to equipment used by personnel during construction, remodeling, maintenance, repair, or demolition of buildings. Shall comply with the requirements of A1 through A3. Receptacle outlets not part of permanent wiring have to have GFCI protection. Receptacle outlets existing or installed as permanent. Existing. GFCI shall be provided for single-phase 15, 20, and 30 ampere receptacle outlets installed or existing as part of the permanent wiring of the building or structure and used for temporary electric power. Interesting. So that would mean if I power my structure from a pole, everything inside has to have GFCI protection while I'm out there in construction, when it's temporary, while it's temporary. And that's 15, 20, and 30 ampere receptacle outlets. And then in 3, 15 kW or less portable generators, receptacles that are on those have to have GFCI. And then in B is other receptacle outlets. For temporary wiring installation, receptacles other than those covered by A1 through A3, I'm not sure what, would not be covered through A1 through A3, used for to supply temporary power to equipment used by personnel during construction, remodeling, and maintenance. That would definitely coincide with 70E because those are electrical workers who are doing construction, remodeling, and maintenance. Not just electrical workers, it's any worker, right? To Steve's point, repair, demolition of buildings or structures shall have protection in accordance with 5. So that's GFCI. You have to have an assured equipment grounding conductor program. It says a written assured equipment grounding conductor program continuously enforced at the site by one or more designated persons to ensure that equipment grounding conductors for all cord sets, receptacles that are not part of the permanent wiring of the building structure and equipment connected by cord and plug are installed and maintained in accordance with applicable requirements. Interesting. Let's get back. Hold on. Jason's got something to say. Three-legged stool, absolutely. 70, 70E, and 70B are all... Any one of those that falls on its face and you jeopardize electrical safety. You're absolutely right, Jason. Robert, 70 NEC is an installation code? Yep. Circuits other than require the additional... Yep. I'm with you. And then you need 70E. So here's the thing, Robert. What I'm seeing is the National Electrical Code is an installation requirement that builds out the infrastructure. Not just for an electrical worker or anybody who's performing work. It is for anybody who is just living, breathing, operating, functioning in that space. If I'm going to go into my kitchen and plug in a blender, I'm going to be GFCI protected. I'm not performing work. I'm cooking. And I'm not getting paid for it. But if you come to my house to do work and you plug into that same receptacle with a tool, you meet the requirements of 70E for safe work practices because you have GFCI protection. And if you plugged your extension cord that already has GFCI built into it, that's just double. You don't compromise safety by having multiple GFCIs. You may have one cord set that you use on all job sites. And when you plug in, it might already be GFCI protected, but now you have a cord set that has GFCI built into it, and you've tested it, you know it works and it functions, you know it's going to do what you need it to do, regardless of the condition of the infrastructure. So you are, I'll say, double protected. Steve, the key wording is by personnel, which are working with and around such equipment and wiring that is required for GFCI protection. I would agree. I agree with you. Okay. Take this out. All right, so that's shock protection. Now we got into lighting a little bit. We have requirements in, let's just do a quick look in 70E for the word light. Adequate lighting, 130.8 Charlie 1. Employees shall not enter spaces where electrical hazards exist unless illumination is provided that enables the employees to perform the work safely. I can take that requirement and flip over to the National Electrical Code and say, I have requirements for lighting. I have requirements for lighting that's going to help facilitate this. But if my structure was built before that requirement was in place, 70E tells my workers that, hey, before you're going to do work in there and you have electrical hazards that exist in that room, if the lighting isn't being provided by the infrastructure for whatever reason, it could be, like you say, it could be a log cabin that has a service on one light bulb, and it doesn't need to be brought up to the National Electrical Code based upon the local state and code laws. But OSHA requirements say that when you're working in there, if you have an electrical hazard, you're going to need to illuminate that room, and by some means. So, and that's covered in 130.8 C, illumination. C1, general requirements. C2 says, where lack of illumination or an obstruction precludes observation of the work to be performed, employees shall not perform any task where an electrical hazard exists. So we have installation requirements to illuminate working areas and spaces, and then we have safe work practices that tell you that you need to, it's not that the safety, that 70E is requiring you to install lighting. No, I can bring in temporary lighting. I can bring battery operated lighting. I've seen some really cool battery operating lighting into rooms and illuminate my work area. I'm not requiring you to bring the infrastructure up to date because you just need it while you're performing work. But if you're working in a new structure, the lighting is there for both the occupant and for you, the electrical worker. Meaning that if equipment and wiring is remotely located, then the requirement doesn't apply. Wow, Steve, I got to look at your previous. The key wording is by personnel, which are working with and around such equipment and wiring that is required for GFCI protection. Meaning that if equipment and wiring is remotely located, then the requirement doesn't apply. I'm going to leave it at that, Steve. I'm not sure if I'm following you. I apologize. All right. Okay, so we have lighting requirements for spaces. And, here's another one. I just looked over and it said clear spaces. Working space required by other codes and standards shall not be used for storage. This space shall be kept clear to permit safe operation and maintenance of electrical equipment. So in the National Electrical Code, we have 110. Is it 110.20? It's not 24. 26? 110. I know it's in 110. I know it's in the 20s. I'm not on 110. Oh, 26. I had it right. 110.26 spaces about electrical equipment. So we have a requirement for working space and egress space. Remember, the doors opening, that's another point of discussion and debate. And there's going to be some changes in the 2026 code from a doors opening and having enough room for egress. So we have in 110.26 working space requirements. And then we have in 70E, you have to have clear spaces, and those working space requirements have to be maintained and kept clear to permit safe operation and maintenance of electrical equipment. So they complement each other. Robert, Jason, I agree with Robert Vomel, but 70E doesn't have to be adopted to be enforced. Same thing with 70B. Thanks to Thanks to OSHA letters of interpretation, they state that 70E is the document to follow to mitigate the known hazards. I like that. Jason, shoot me an email with that one. That letter, I don't know if you have that letter of interpretation. You can save me some time. If you could shoot me that email, that would be great. I would love to make sure we include that. I include that discussion even here or in when I do my 70E classes with Palmer. I like it. All right. 110.26, yes. Okay, so we have a requirement for clear spaces in the National Electrical Code, and we complement that with working space requirements in 70E. Now, so we've given some examples of how these two documents dance together beautifully and they complement each other. How about charging statement in 110.26, all equipment requiring working space? Yes. So it says working space and access to egress shall be provided and maintained about all electrical equipment to permit ready and safe operation and maintenance of such equipment. So it says, what it says is right here. Make this bigger. Uh, 110.26. It says working space and access to and egress from working space shall be provided and maintained about all electrical equipment to permit ready and safe operation and maintenance of such energized shall comply with the dimensions as... All right, are you guys there? Sorry about that. I had a little glitch. I don't know if I'm still streaming. Let me know, guys. Am I still okay? Am I still okay? So it looks like I'm live. All right. You're back online. I don't know what happened. I looked up, my battery is at 8%, and I'm not sure why I'm at 8%. I don't know why I'm at 8%, but everything locked up. And I'm not sure why I locked up. And I can't get that off. There we go. All right, so I'm back online. So what I was saying was, when I was so rudely interrupted, I'm back at... my power is at 8% on this battery. I don't know why, and I'm plugged in to the receptacle. So, but in any case, when I think about 70E and the working space, I was just saying that my issue is when it says, or National Electrical Code says, you have to have working space when you're going to have energized work. And Jason, you know as good as I do, that even establishing an electrically safe work condition is justified energized work, because you have to assume that is 1910.333. Thank you, sir. You have to assume it's energized. Now let's talk about arc flash, because that's where the debate usually occurs, is around the concept of incident energy and whether or not there should be requirements in the National Electrical Code that reference incident energy. The way I look at it, when you look at 240.87 and 240.67, that's in the NEC, 240.87 and 240.67 are requiring an arc reduction technology in the code. So I'm required to put some level of arc reduction technology when my overcurrent protected device is 1200 amps and above. And that's a challenge for some people, because they'll say that's a 70E thing. But that's not necessarily, in my opinion. I mean, I think you set the precedence with shock, lighting, workspace. Now you have an installation requirement. And the discussion that we had on panel 10 was, instead of having a trigger point at 1200 amps and above, do you put the trigger point off of when you have so many calories and above? And now, marry on, now you have 240.87 and 240.67 that is an installation requirement to address incident energy. And then you have in 110.16 labeling requirements. And in the before the 2023 edition, it was for service equipment. In the 2023 edition, we had a 1200 amps and above service equipment or feeder supplied equipment at 1200 amps and above. You had to put an arc flash label on it or some other labeling. No, actually, you had to put an arc flash label on that equipment based upon industry standards. Before 2023, you could put voltage, the available fault current, and the clearing time of the overcurrent protective device or devices, service overcurrent devices, and the date. But as of 2023, they said, no, they got rid of that list. They said, follow your industry practice. Your either NFPA 70E would be a good example, which then points to various methods, one of which is IEEE 1584. So you have a labeling requirement in the National Electrical Code in 110.16. Then you have an actual arc reduction requirement in 240.87 and 240.67. The debate that we had on panel 10, and Jason knows this very well, was do we have a trigger point should we have a trigger point instead of being based off of 1200 amps and above, be based off of the amount of incident energy at a given piece of equipment in the power distribution system? I think that makes a heck of a lot more sense, in my opinion, than just saying 1200 amps above, because I could have high incident energy on a 400 amp panel board, or a 600 amp panel board, or an 800 amp panel board. I don't need to have a 1200 amp overcurrent device to have high incident energy. What I need are lower fault currents. And why put an arc reduction technology in place when you don't need it if you've already addressed the incident energy via other methods? It could be that that your fault currents are so high and you're not selectively coordinating the system, and your series rating everything. Why do I need to have to put an arc reduction technology in place? As long as my incident energy values that are labeled in accordance with recommended industry practices or industry codes and standards, why can't I just use that? So that's sort of the route, and I think in the coming cycles for the National Electrical Code, you're going to probably start seeing that line in the sand drawn at an energy value instead of being drawn based upon the size of the overcurrent protective device. Eric Hammond, thank you. We are going to be closing up shop. Robert from Omaha, let's see what he's got to say. You need some maintenance. Have you checked my hunger and thirst levels? You know what? I have not. I tell you what, I have been on the go since breakfast this morning, since 8 a.m. It is meeting after meeting after meeting after meeting. And then I had to do this. And then I have another one at 1 o'clock. Then I have another one at 2. Then I have another one at 3. So it's somewhere in there. I'm going to be meeting with somebody online. And I'm going to be not showing my camera because I have to eat lunch. This body didn't get this way through starvation. Eric, gotta run. For the great discussion as always, don't forget to smash that like button, hit that thumbs up, and don't forget to subscribe and become an IAEI member. Again, it's about arc energy reduction. Arc energy is measured in calories per centimeter squared. That is exactly right. And if you already have, if my calories is 0.5 calories per centimeter squared, then I've done my job. I don't need any other methods to reduce incident energy because I've already got it down. But the question is, Jason, this is where the debate's going to happen. What is the acceptable energy level? We had the discussion at 40 cals is the number. Do you feel comfortable at 40 cals? The one code panel member from panel 10, I can't remember his name. It'll come to me. Sparks. His comment was 8 calories is what he designs to. Is 8 calories the right number? Is 4 calories the right number? That's the question. What is the number beyond which you need to provide an arc energy reduction method? Jason, thanks for chiming in, Jason. Laurel, thank you. Great discussion. Michael Hofkin, as always, I enjoyed the session. And I thank you for all that you do. And I hope you enjoy your week as well. What's the number? Exactly. What's the number? I can just see you shaking your head up and down. What's the number? Because that is where the debate's going to be. Is it 8? Is it 10? Is it 20? Is it 40? What do you feel comfortable? Where do we draw that line in the sand? That's going to be the debate. Steve, thank you very much. Thanks, everybody. Fred, is the approach boundary consideration needed? You're right, Fred. Now, here's the other question I have. Is the approach boundary and the calories, are they related? Can I have a high calorie? Can I have 40 calories and a short approach boundary? Probably not. It's probably going to be pretty long. And maybe it's, I don't know. I don't know if, man. You know, that's a good discussion. I got to look at that. What's the relationship? That's the basic question. What's the relationship between calories per centimeter squared and the approach boundary? Your arc flash boundary, basically. Not your limited approach boundary or your restricted approach boundary, but your arc flash boundary. Because your limited approach boundary and your restricted approach boundary is shock related. But your arc flash boundary is arc flash rated. Working distance. Oh, man. Fred. Oh, you're making my head hurt, Fred. It's Tuesday. It's Tuesday. All right. What a great discussion. I thank everybody for your engagement. We are growing this channel. This channel is coming off the rails. We're going to be meeting 10,000 here shortly. So we are, let me look at what, without risking, let's see where we're at. We're over 7,000. We're almost at 7,200 followers right now on this YouTube channel. I want to be at 10,000 plus by June. All right? I want to be 10,000 plus by June. Can we do it? We need to share, and we're going to start now that we're monetizing now on IAEI's YouTube channel. We're going to start providing materials and content for that will be for paid subscribers. So keep an eye out for that. You're not going to want to miss that. It's not going to break the bank. We're going to have more and more materials that are going to be behind that paid. I'm still going to be doing this. We're still going to be offering a lot that will be for free, but the juice, it's going to be worth the squeeze, is going to be on a subscription basis. So stay tuned for that, and a lot more to come on this YouTube channel. We're going to break the rails, baby. We're making it happen. Thanks for joining in. Thanks for everything. Oh, Jason. Well, the arc flash boundary states 1.2. Yeah, the arc flash boundary is at 1.2 calories per centimeter squared. That's the distance you need to get to 1.2. And I'm not sure what that relationship is between the 1.2 and, say, 30 calories. What's the distance to get to 1.2? If I'm at 18 calories, what's the distance to get to 1.2? And what's that relationship? I got to plot that out. All right, everybody, take care. I got a 1 o'clocker. Take care, stay safe, and please stay healthy. I'm going to sign off for now. See you. Next week is Coeur d'Alene Committee. I'm going to be traveling on Monday. Tuesday, I'll be at the Coeur d'Alene Committee meeting. I might have to record Tuesday's session. Unless I can get, we're going to be in Savannah, Georgia. So if I can go live from Savannah, I will do that at 12 o'clock Eastern, but I'm not sure. So I may have to record it. Either way, we're going to be on the channel. So see you next week, same time, same place. Stay safe, and please stay healthy. See ya. I got to get this to end. I can't end. I pressed the button and it doesn't work.